President Trump is dialing up his pressure campaign to revamp how you vote. Keep in mind, too, we're less than 100 days out from the midterm elections. On Monday, he asked the Supreme Court to allow his executive order curtailing mail-in voting, and is also demanding again that the Senate pass his elections bill, even if it means killing the filibuster.
You got to get the Save America Act passed. Or better than that would be the filibuster. If you terminate the filibuster, everything happens. If you don't terminate the filibuster, only bad things will happen.
Well, hours later, Senate Majority Leader John Thune went on Fox News to deliver a dose of reality to the president.
I've had this conversation with the president many times, I think, as you know. And I actually suggested at one point that his team come up and sit down and visit with some of my colleagues. So they came up, met with about 20 Republican senators, and 15 were no on getting rid of the filibuster. The votes aren't there to do it. I know he thinks he can persuade people, but there are a lot of folks who are this is a hard position for a lot of Senate Republicans.
Joining us now in the group chat, Shan, defense attorney, former federal prosecutor. Shan, nice to see you. So let's start first with this push from the president, right, from the administration for his executive order. So they argue, and I'm quoting here, the injunction is especially indefensible because the agencies are still deliberating over how, if at all, to implement the order. Yet the district court preemptively decided that whatever the agencies may choose to do will necessarily be unlawful. They're not highlighting the merits, right, of the executive order here, saying here's why it should go into effect. They're saying SCOTUS should allow this to happen because the states sued before it actually happened.
Right.
How much, legally, how strong is that argument?
There's so many things wrong with that argument. We just could take hours to dissect it. But you're right. They're not trying to address the merits. Maybe they sense the merits are kind of weak. But the problem is this. If the high court were to agree with them, and this is an administrative stay, it's not really even reaching the merits, just pause for a moment. Basically, the harm that the lower courts recognize as irreparable would come to pass because you're letting these actions start to get carried out without the proper judicial review as to whether they're lawful or not. So really what they're trying to do is to fudge the request. They're saying, look, we're just saying that the district courts acted too early, but actually, if you stop what the district courts did, we basically get what we want right now.
Right. And what they want is to limit this mail-in voting, to significantly change the way elections are handled in a number of states. But of course, there is this whole issue about who controls elections in the states, and it is, in fact, the states.
Exactly. And even the way they're suggesting this is pretty vague and poorly thought out, but it's the idea of first you want the federal agencies, maybe DHS is directed very vaguely to compile some sort of correct list, and then the post office is not allowed to send the ballots unless they're on that list. I mean, just from a logistics point of view, it just is impossible to get that implemented without sowing chaos over the next 100 days.
So as people look at this, right, we are now, I believe it's, are we 98 days today? 98? I know I could count on you, Chuck. 98 days out. Nothing is happening for November. Is that where we stand?
Right, correct. Right now, nothing's happening. That's what the lower court said. They're saying you can't implement this executive order right now.
Can't right now. So as we watch all of this, as all of this is playing out, too, we cannot ignore there's a whole lot of politics at play here in all of these efforts. So we just heard from John Thune there. He's not the only one speaking out, right? You have Mike Lee, who said he wants to force a vote on whether the Senate should even go to August recess. And then here we have John Cornyn weighing in as well, calling all of this a big mistake. Take a listen.
I don't understand the rationale. I think it's basically we're over-promising, and we're not going to be able to deliver on that promise because we don't have the votes to pass it, no matter how long we stay, and we're not going to change the filibuster. So, but somehow the president's convinced that if he presses hard enough, that we'll come around.
The president's not giving up on this. Absolutely not. How damaging could that be?
I think it's really damaging. It's not 98 days. That's 98 days till Election Day. They're going to start mailing these ballots out in less than a month in some states. And guess who they're going to mail them to, boys and girls at home? They're going to send them to your Army, Air Force, Marines overseas. That's why this was set up. And the reason some of these common sense Republicans are going, hang on, let's wait a minute, is because a lot of this vote by mail was set up by Republicans to help Republicans. Guess who don't want to drive miles to the polling location? country folks on farms where I grew up, and guess how most of them, not all of them, TW, hold on, vote Republican. And that's why Republicans aren't always against this. So I think this is how this cuts both ways, because a lot of mail-in ballots, I've been running campaigns long enough to know that what they're doing is going to harm themselves as much as us. But we can sit back and say, why don't you want the military to vote? Why can't we mail them a ballot?
Well, to be fair, President Trump has always said that the military would get a mail-in ballot. That's never been questioned. But you are right. And in fact, Donald Trump did significantly better last time around with mail-in ballots than he did in 2020, because he was saying, go do it. I think his problems mostly are with universal mail-in ballot, everybody who's a registered voter getting mailed a ballot. I think Donald Trump, two things. First of all, John Thune and John Cornyn are completely right. I am totally on their team, and if we scrap the filibuster, God help us if the Democrats get control, because we're going to see new states, we're going to see a bigger Supreme Court, we're going to see everything conservatives don't want. But Donald Trump needs to break this battle into two things. It is one thing to talk about mail-in ballots, mail-in voting as a general, which should fall to the states. That's them implementing an election. And another thing about the SAVE Act, which is upholding, making sure that you're 18 years old and you're a legal citizen to vote. Those are two separate things in my eyes. I would focus on one of them. The Save America Act isn't getting passed, but if we can do some sort of watered-down version, take one part of it and put it in a package, I think a lot of Republicans would find that as a win. But I think the American people want us talking about the economy, and Donald Trump should tout the wins he's done in that regard.
That part.
Would it be possible, I mean, looking at what we have seen from President Trump, to TW's point, could you ever see a world in which he can separate these two?
I don't necessarily think so, right? I think what we've seen is that the president, once he has his teeth sunk into something, his teeth sunk into an idea that he thinks, he attempts to sort of go forward with it, right? We see it across the sort of policy ideas from Iran and sort of foreign policy to domestic policy. But I think one of the things I want to highlight here is that civil rights groups argue that effectively both the Save America Act and the mail-in voting scheme from the executive order would functionally provide an additional burden, right? It would become cumbersome on one of these very basic principles of democracy and one of the most fundamental pieces of democracy, and that is the fact that you can vote for your elected representatives, right? And so to make it harder to basically participate in that basic function of democracy is, civil rights groups say, a violation.
Yeah. We will be talking about this one again, for sure. That I can assure all of you. Thank you all, Shan. Nice to have you here with us as well. Thank you. Still